This program is brought to you by Emory University.
The 5th century BC Parthenon in Athens, Greece, is a magnificent building, admired in antiquity and today for its stately design and lavish sculptural decoration. But some of the design decisions made in this iconic monument perplex us. In particular, the position of the Parthenon Frieze. Set within the colonnade, at the top of the cellar wall, directly beneath the ceiling, and lit only by ambient light, how visible could the frieze have been to viewers of the Parthenon? The current condition of the building and the dispersal of the frieze make this a difficult question to answer in Athens. But in Nashville, Tennessee, the precise replica of the Parthenon offers an opportunity to explore the issue. In the fall of 2012, Emory students and scholars addressed the question of visibility by creating several two-scale panels of the frieze. After installing them on the Nashville Parthenon, they asked people what they saw.
What our seminar is currently working on is the Emory Parthenon Frieze project, which is something our whole class has been involved in. What we're doing now is creating canvas mock-ups which are exactly to scale, and painting them in colors that are custom mixed to simulate what ancient colors might have looked like on the Parthenon frieze blocks. Hopefully, when these are installed on the Nashville Parthenon, we can conduct a series of questions and learn about the impact of color and how it would have enhanced legibility.
In Nashville, for the centenary of Tennessee, they built a replica of the Parthenon, and they liked it so much they built another in permanent materials under the direction of a fellow named William Bell Dinsmore, who was the leading American architectural historian of the 20th century. And he was real precise. So every feature of this building ends up being exactly as the original Parthenon. Every refinement, every proportion, every measurement. The only thing that is radically different is the material. And it's made of a pebbly concrete as opposed to Pentelic marble.
The intent when the building was made permanent in the 1920s was for it to be complete with all the sculpture, including Athena, inside. And in the end, there wasn't enough money. So we waited 50 years for Athena, and we're still waiting for the Ionic frieze sculpture.
There was lots of questions we had to ask. We had to decide how we could do this. What could we afford to do? What was most important? Was it relief or was it color? What were the ancient colors that were used in the frieze? Because we know it was painted, but with what? And so these are all the decisions the students have been making in the course of the semester.
One thing that's exciting is as we create the panels and paint, we're learning and observing things that really weren't apparent as we just looked at the line drawings or read about these panels in books. So for example, figures and their positioning becomes much more clear when you're actually drawing it onto the canvas to life size. It's kind of exciting because all these things, all these little tiny details that may not have stood out on the block because they're all sort of uniform in color are now beginning to jump out at us and raise new questions. So I'm eager to sort of see how these look when they're done and see what elements stick out and what attracts people.
We really wanted to have a contrast with the painted panels, so we decided to construct another example of the frieze out of insulation foam so that we could really get the 3D effect and study the effect of color and relief with the effects of just color. To make this, we used the same technique that we did with the painted panels. We used Jennifer Niles' line drawings of the frieze and projected them onto a wall to get a pattern that we could then apply to the insulation foam and cut out. After that, we glued the two pieces together with contact cements, added some fabric details with cheesecloth and white glue so that we could really get a nice molded fabric effect that replicates the carving on the actual frieze. And then we sealed it with a mixture of joint compound and more white glue that would accept the paint, which we applied as the last step.
I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of interest. People write about how you have to crane your neck and, how it's just so impossible. So we'll see what the response is. We hope for one result, we might get another. People might say, can't say a thing. Yeah.
One of the chief aims of the Parthenon project was to approximate the frieze panels as accurately as possible. However, due to the floodlighting and the limitations of the lift, we were only able to get them to an approximation of where they would have been. That's why you see that there's some gaps. Being up there 40 feet in the air, trying to attach Velcro to concrete was a very difficult process. We got as close as we could, and there are a couple gaps, but other than that, I think it turned out really well.
The bird netting was one extra challenge for us that Phidias, the sculptor in charge of the Parthenon, didn't need to face in antiquity. However, it gave me a unique opportunity to be in the space of the frieze 40 feet high from the ground. Here, I could immediately get a sense of awe and even mystery and a sense of being cut off from all the activities on the ground. This experience helped me to understand further the appropriateness of the Parthenon Frieze concerning its subject matter and its original setting.
Students made a questionnaire asking visitors what they can see, and each station is designed to ask a different kind of question.
And what you're going to do with your orange flag is you're going to walk towards the building from here.
They'll have a red and a green flag, and they'll walk along the Pan-Athenatic Way, which is marked out over there. So we're hoping to get bands around the building that show you this area of visibility. Then there's another question that asks, when you can see the frieze, can you still see the metopes and pediments? Because another student's writing a paper about whether you're supposed to sequentially enjoy the sculpture. Right. All of our questions center around why they put this in the position they put it. Was it an afterthought? Was it just a circumstance? Or did they actually have positive ideas in mind?
In actuality, there would have been walls and Buddhist statues and stela and all sorts of things all over the top of the Acropolis. So this would have been steps leading up to it, which is important because we're trying to figure out when you can see the frieze, so you're probably not going to be stopping to look at a frieze as you're walking up multiple steps.
We now have the 3 different types of panel on the building. Painted canvas panels, a panel painted in low relief, and one in relief, but left monochrome in imitation of unpainted marble. At Station 15, we are asking people to look at all 3 and say which matters most, color or relief.
It does seem entirely purposeful. I mean, it seems like the purpose of all this is, once you get to the point where you can't see the one, you can then see the other. The idea that it's a visual thing for the visitor as opposed to, theoretically just for Athena. I mean, that's fantastic. I think that's pretty much borne out.
I think they had a greater appreciation for the finer things in their culture.
I love it. It adds color and interest and makes me want to stay and look longer.
When we were first putting these up and when I first came to Nashville, I was like, there's so much shadow up there, like the light doesn't hit it, and so I think color really brings them out, and I think it's necessary.
On the survey, visitors were asked to respond to a question of whether or not they could see the smaller details that would have been especially picked out with paint. So we were concerned with the footwear and also the bridles and the reins of the horses and the facial features of the humans. And our results showed that they were largely visible, with the exception that the bridles and reins of the horses were slightly less visible, and we think this is because we were not using bronze metal attachments as the original frieze would have.
I'm education director here, and so I've always wondered what it looked like up there and what the Athenians were actually seeing. And I also wondered if you could tell by looking up what they were showing, because it's so high up. And this is fabulous. I am so excited, and I can't wait to do more stuff with this project.
Yeah.
I'm puzzled by the frieze. It seems to be hidden away a little bit. Given that, this is, the pediment and the metopes are so much more out front. There's such a limited area in which you could actually see it. I think that's interesting, that even though it's optimal for a moment, then maybe that makes it more impressive that it comes into sight and then you lose it.
This is about the gods, this is about the heroes, and then all of a sudden there's something about the Athenians, about you. And I think and you're closest to the goddess, you're on the inside.
The whole sculptural program, including the metopes and the 2 pediments and the Athena inside and all the ornamentation on her, along with the Ionic frieze, speaks to how the Athenians thought of themselves and their relationship to Athena and to other peoples, and it works together. This gives us a lot of information to think more about what we can do that will complete this building's offering to the public. And maybe we don't need to worry about the relief carving. Maybe we need to be more concerned with the figures being there and the color being there, and so maybe it could be two-dimensional.
I'm really impressed with what she and her graduate students at Emory have done. They have proven what I've long believed, that you can see the frieze, you can see it very well, and that really is an integrally important part of a viewer's experience of the building. And of course, here on the west side of the building, you would begin the sequence of the frieze, the story of this great procession, which ends on the center of the eastern front of the building. One aspect of what the students and Professor Wescoat have proved today is how important color was to a viewer's perception of the frieze. I think far too often we appreciate the beauty, the crystalline structure of Greek marble, and don't enough appreciate that the Greeks covered a lot of that up with paint. It's what conveys to the viewer the distinction between the figures in the foreground and the blue background, the distinction between one figure and its neighbor. And the variety of colors, the different colors for the horses, the different colors for the garments, the shoes, the headgear of the horsemen would have made this really a very, very impressive piece of art for the Athenians. One other aspect, of course, of the frieze, which the Emory students and Professor Wescoat have reproduced, is the relief. Low relief granted, but relief nonetheless, the projection of the figures from the background. And the enhancement that, as well as the color, give to the viewer down below, standing in a position to see the frieze, really, really important to the readability of the whole thing. I believe that what has been proven today will be very important going on as we speak about the entirety of the Parthenon, both the architecture and the sculpture of the building.
We were lucky to have this opportunity to engage in a kind of experimental archaeology, reproducing the experience of viewing the Parthenon Frieze. We faced numerous challenges. We were limited in our time, our resources, and our material in making the panels. Nevertheless, the panels were in place long enough for a wide audience to get a sense of their visibility. Of the 93 people who took the survey, the overwhelming majority said that they could see the figures on the frieze and many of the details without difficulty. This experiential data offers a major step forward in our understanding of the visibility of the frieze, and it sheds light on why this particular position may have been chosen. The Parthenon Frieze, while visible, was seen differently from the metapiece and pediments. The gods and heroes of the pediments and metapiece are broadly visible for all to see. The Parthenon Frieze, on the other hand, is only seen from up close. Many observers thought it was even a more intimate viewing experience. We can only imagine that for the ancient Athenians, it must have also been a deeply moving one to be in the company of ideal representations of themselves.
We can actually stand up and do this. And get it back on again.
Stay for it. All right.
The preceding program is copyrighted by Emory University.